Welcome to TerraPulse News. Today we're diving deep into a topic that's rattling economies, reshaping policies and affecting everyday lives around the globe: global inflation and the rising fears of recession. Across continents, from grocery stores in Chicago to gas stations in Paris, families, businesses and governments are feeling the heat. Prices are higher, wages are stagnant, and central banks are treading a delicate balance between growth and collapse. But how did we get here? What's fueling this prolonged inflationary cycle? Are we truly headed for a global recession, or is there a way out? To answer those questions, we need to break down the timeline, the triggers, and the outlook. Let's start with the core of the issue: inflation itself. Inflation, at its most basic, is the rate at which the prices of goods and services rise. When it climbs too fast, it erodes purchasing power. What you could buy for $10 last year might cost $12 this year. It hits low and middle income families the hardest, and when it's sustained across the globe, it can bring entire economies to the brink. Global inflation began surging after 2020, a year marked by unprecedented global shutdowns due to COVID-19. Governments responded to the economic shock by injecting massive fiscal and monetary stimulus. Interest rates dropped to near zero in many advanced economies. Trillions of dollars, euros, and yen were poured into the global economy. The aim was to keep businesses afloat, preserve jobs, and maintain liquidity. But when supply chains remained broken and, consumer demand roared back faster than production, it created a perfect storm. Scarcity drove prices up, shipping costs surged, labor shortages made matters worse. Just as the world began adjusting to the new normal, Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022. The geopolitical shock sent global energy markets into disarray. Russia, a major exporter of oil and natural gas, was sanctioned. Energy prices soared. Simultaneously, Ukraine's ability to export wheat, corn, and sunflower oil was crippled, sending food prices through the roof. Inflation was no longer a temporary blip. It became structural. Central banks, who had previously dismissed inflation as transitory, were forced to act. Interest rate hikes followed, fast and aggressive. The U.S. Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, and others began a series of rate increases not seen in decades. Higher interest rates have a purpose: to cool down an overheating economy. They discourage borrowing and reduce spending, ideally bringing prices under control. But they also carry a cost: slower growth, job losses, and tighter credit conditions. By mid-2023, signs of economic slowdown started to emerge. In Germany, the economy technically slipped into recession. In the United States, growth decelerated, and some regional banks collapsed under pressure. In the United Kingdom, inflation remained stubbornly high despite rising rates. Emerging markets were hit hard. Countries like Argentina, Turkey, and Pakistan faced double-digit inflation. Some turned to the International Monetary Fund for help. Others raised their own interest rates dramatically, despite the risk to domestic growth. In Africa, the picture was, mixed. While some commodity exporting countries definitely benefited from higher oil and gas prices, others really suffered from rising food import costs and capital flight. Food insecurity actually worsened in parts of East and West Africa. Asia presented a more complex story. Japan, after decades of deflation, saw inflation creep up for the first time in years. China, while relatively insulated from global food and energy shocks, struggled with a different issue: weak consumer demand and deflationary pressure. India faced food inflation, especially in items like onions, wheat, and pulses. Globally, a question loomed: are central banks overcorrecting? Are we heading toward a global recession triggered not by market failure but by policy tightening? As of early 2025, the answer remains, uncertain. Some analysts believe a soft landing is still possible. That is, inflation can be brought down without triggering widespread recession. Others warn that the damage may already be done, especially for developing countries. Let's look at three key dynamics shaping the path forward. First, the labor market. In the United States and parts of Europe, unemployment remains historically low. That's a good sign, but it also keeps wage pressure high, which can feed inflation. Central banks are watching wage growth closely. Second, supply chains. While many have stabilized since the peak of the pandemic, new risks have emerged: geopolitical tensions, climate-related disruptions, and shifts toward deglobalization. Supply resilience is improving, but vulnerabilities remain. Third, energy prices. They're a major wild card. Oil prices have stabilized for now, but any new shock, whether from conflict in the Middle East, sanctions on Iran, or a Russian production cut, could send prices soaring again, reviving inflation fears. In response to these pressures, governments are also playing a bigger role. Price caps, subsidies, and food security programs are being expanded in countries from France to Egypt. But, these measures are costly and not always sustainable. Debt is another looming issue. The world is now more indebted than at any point in modern history. Governments spent massively during the pandemic, and interest payments are now rising along with rates. For low-income countries, debt distress is already a reality. So what does all of this mean for the average person? Well, first, expect continued volatility. Prices may not return to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon. Food, rent, fuel, healthcare, these will remain top concerns for families worldwide. Second, savings and investments will be affected. Higher interest rates might benefit savers in the short term, but market volatility and uncertain economic growth create risks for retirement accounts and portfolios. Third, inequality could worsen. Wealthier households can hedge against inflation while poorer families face eroded wages and higher living costs. The policy response will be critical in bridging that gap. So where do we go from here? Most central banks are signaling that the rate hiking cycle is nearing its end. The focus now is on maintaining balance, fighting inflation without killing growth, supporting employment without igniting a wage price spiral. Some countries are betting on industrial policy and green energy investments to spur growth. Others are doubling down on austerity and fiscal restraint. In the end, the inflation crisis is a reminder that global economies are deeply interconnected. A shock in one region reverberates worldwide. Addressing inflation and recession fears will require coordinated policy, smarter trade, resilient supply chains, and most importantly, a commitment to shared prosperity. This has been a TerraPulse News special report. We'll continue to monitor the economic trends shaping our future. If you found this report helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We break down global complexity so you can stay informed and empowered. Until next time, stay curious and stay aware.